Bearings are the unsung hero of your entire torsion system. You could have the best spring in the world, but if the bearings aren't working, your door is at risk. Welcome to the Garage Authority Podcast, powered by A1. I'm your host, Jonathan Phillips, and today, returning, the second best trainer in the academy, behind Sarah Evans, Andrew Rosenbaum. What's up, brother? Today, we are talking about bearings. Bearings hold up the torsion system that is the muscle of your door, but we feel like they're very overlooked.
Very much so.
Very overlooked. So I want to bring Andrew Rosenbaum, one of the number one trainers in the garage door industry in the world, willing to challenge it. If you think you're a better trainer, go ahead and drop a like in the comments, and you can come out to the training academy and we'll go head to head, brother or sister. Who knows? Andrew, what do we have on the table? What can we talk about bearings for people listening?
Well, we have some bearings on the table. Yeah, shocker, right?
Looky there.
So we'll start with end bearings. How about that?
End bearings.
So end bearings come as a pair, and they are on the outside of your torsion line. They connect the horizontal track to the vertical track, hopefully using a flag bracket.
Yes.
Hopefully. These do get overlooked quite a bit. You know, in my years of doing this, I've seen a lot of guys that tell me the bearings are fine unless they're completely seized up. That's not always the case. You know, the whole spring line has to turn. When bearings start to fail, the spring line is still trying to turn. So then we have drums being pressed and pushed against the bearing, which can cause premature wear of the drums because now they're moving at two different speeds. The other thing is bearings, most people don't talk about it, but they're rated on cycles just like springs.
Yeah.
So in an ideal world, these should be changed every time the springs are changed.
Yeah.
A lot of other people and companies don't believe in that.
To a degree, so typically, and from what I know, this might be garage door bro science, but I've gone to a couple facilities like Clopay and Amar, and usually every piece of a door is rated in cycles. For bearings and rollers in particular, they actually get them to a 10,000 cycle rating, but it's on like a 12-foot door that they do it on. So that's a lot more rotation, a lot more time for heat buildup, even though not scorching, but that does wear down over time. So then whenever you do the math a little bit, you break it down to a 7 or 8 foot door. Most of the time, these ideally, if installed properly, can get up to about 25,000 cycles. But the reason why I've seen in my experience, and you're going to have a guy out there that's never had to replace a bearing before that's been doing it 30 years. More power to you, brother.
Yeah.
But whenever I see a spring break, it's if a system is installed absolutely perfectly, yes, we could probably get those 25,000 cycles.
Which would still be maybe every other spring change for the industry standard 10,000 cycle spring.
And everyone wants to say, yeah, that's installed perfectly. If I went to every install and took an actual laser level to everything, it's hard to get a door absolutely perfect. They can say it's absolutely perfect, but if you're using, a bubble level or something like that, there's some room for error and there's give, so it's okay. But
even think back in the day, we were taught horizontals should be kind of teetered out a little bit.
V out a little bit,
which then your bearing is not riding at an actual 90 degree. It's tilted. That's going to prematurely wear your bearings out.
There's tons of, is it a single spring system? No. So if it's a single spring,
all that
springs
torque,
when they come wound and unwound, expand and contract. So it's shifting things side to side. This is why you should put 2 springs on a door anytime that you can, and what I want people to understand is, yes, there can be a cycle rating for everything. Hey man, I'll express it right off the bat. There's some max life springs that are supposed to get up to 80,000 cycles, but a door is a giant conglomerate of moving parts.
Yep.
And there's things that can affect that. I've seen max life springs break at 40,000 cycles. I've seen a manufacturer defect. It's still covered, but things happen. So bearings, what people don't understand to me is when we talk about this starting to seize up, this is metal, and it's a pretty thick gauge as far as the ring where the bearings sit on or the actual tube goes through. But if this seizes up or it's moving at a different speed than that tube that's potentially a 16 or 14 gauge, which isn't that thick, metal on metal, something's got to give. And you could have a million cycle spring, a billion, trillion, forget it.
It doesn't matter.
Double trillion times 12 to the fourth power. Best spring that God can make. It's going to cut through that tube.
Yeah.
If it's not healthy. And how many times have you gone to a job to where people haven't maintained bearings? They just put new springs up. They've lived there for 20 years. And you take that tube out and you just see a divot right in there, which, by the way, like cable, drum sits right here. All the weight of the door is on these outside bearings. And now it's being worn down to a very thin metal with your 200, 300 pound door. Have you ever seen one when it cuts all the way through and what that looks like?
I have.
Story time?
It can be bad.
It can be bad. Just a little.
You know, when that tube gets to the point of worn like that, even maybe before it even breaks completely, that tube has now been so disintegrated that it doesn't keep straight. And just the torque of the movement of the springs, now the tube's able to go a little wonky.
Now we got a paper clip.
Yeah. You know, and what we mean by that is once that metal gets so thin and it's able to kind of go off level, now your whole system has a little too much freedom. Or you get the part of the tube that's going through the end bearing still good, and the rest of it's a little crooked. Like it's not good. You know, it can cause a door to completely come off track and fall down and all sorts of bad.
Yeah. I mean, cars, Lord forbid, people, pets, animals, and not to mention just there's got to be something as a homeowner. I haven't experienced it myself, but to whenever a garage breaks like that and your door's cattywampus, that's me and Dylan Kepley's new favorite word.
I love that word.
I love cattywampus. Actually, thank you, Elisa Imperial. She taught me that word. All sideways. And then it's like 6 o'clock at night. A lot of companies are closed.
Or people think they can just pull the side down that's up.
Yeah.
And try to get it sealed for the night.
And now the biggest moving object in your home is now the biggest gate to the rest of the world with all your belongings and stuff in the garage. I imagine sleep waiting for a garage door company to come the next day is not very good, waiting for that to happen.
Yeah, I could tell you times where people tried to get the door down, and by trying to force it when it's cattywampus, they're now destroying their tracks more.
Oh, yeah.
Or they're destroying the panels trying to pull it down because now all your spring tension is on one side and nothing on the other. So you're trying to force all that. I don't care how big or strong you are. The thin gauge doors and all the other components, the hinges, the track, they're going to give before that spring's like, okay, I'll go with you.
My bad, dog. I'll chill. Yeah. The spring will say that.
But yeah, you know, even the people that get the door down close enough to the ground where they can now put bags of cement or buckets or rugs or everything they can find to try to seal it for the night so they feel better about it.
Every time I've gone to a house and there's just a giant, they put up like a couple like king size sheets that are over it just to cover up the area. I'm like, how long has it been like this? 3 days. You know, we have emergency service, right? They're like, yeah, we hired 2 other companies and they just never showed up. And I'm like, oh, wow. So we've been stuck like this for a while. I am so sorry. Yeah. But that's okay. That's why A1 exists. Any place that has emergency service is really a good company. But we've talked about the end bearings. Now I want to kind of talk about that.
When you say that, what are we talking about? This guy?
I won't even say it. I don't even want to look at it.
So this, in my days, I refer to it as the contractor's plastic donut.
Contractor's plastic donut.
And what this is the manufacturer's answer to putting a spacer between the springs to ride on an open center bearing plate. So this helps keep the tube nice and centered. So the springs, everything can rotate like it should. The reason I call it the contractor's plastic donut is because that's what it is. It's just hard plastic.
Yeah.
No moving parts. But everything that it rides on it is a moving part.
And metal.
And metal. What do you think is going to give first, the plastic or the metal?
If I was a betting man, I would say the plastic.
I think you're right, John.
Yeah?
I really do. Yes. Matter of fact, I've come across these in the wild where they've been cracked or broken. or literally the tube has worn it in an orbital kind of an opening versus your circle, meaning your whole system is able to go orbital. So if this goes bad and your system is going orbital, what's it doing to the rest of these? Oh, and you want to talk about what happens if this breaks?
I want to talk about this hot knife right here that tube is going to be sitting on.
If this breaks, now it's kind of out of the picture, and your torsion tube is now riding on, would you say, a hot butter knife?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. I have seen torsion tubes literally get cut in half.
That's the most common that I see. I see the ends get messed up in extreme situations. Now, what's crazy about that is that little piece of metal. So we talk about hollow tubes, right? There are some doors that need a solid shaft.
Yeah, on those heavy doors.
That cuts through a solid inch thick piece of steel. So what do you think
it might
does?
take a little longer, which I would hope you're hearing the signs of something is wrong before it gets to that point. I haven't seen the solid shaft get cut, but I've definitely been to a job. They're like, I don't know, all of a sudden my door just fell and the cables are loose and the springs made a lot of noise. And I'm like, I go and inspect and I pull their springs apart from the center plate. And what do you know it? They have a 2-piece torsion tube. It's not a solid tube anymore.
What is it? Those old, this is more for the techs out there, those old...
the Martin doors?
The dead spring line bar coal doors where they had those 6-inch springs. These is like 1950s, 1940s.
Yeah, that's...
and they literally had 2 independent shafts. And you'd see it on like a single wood garage. And these are like huge springs that are around, but the lines are completely separated.
Okay.
And then the set screws are actually like Allen keys for it too.
Okay.
And then once it's set, it's set. So it kind of works like an extension spring to where you actually have to have that door up in the air to detension it because there's no way going forward. Sorry, that was for technicians. If you know what I'm talking about, you hate working on those doors, usually replace it. But those, usually whenever it cuts in half, I'm like, oh, it's kind of like that door, but not designed to do that.
Not designed to do that.
Not designed to do that.
So once that tube is now cut, there's nothing to hold that tension across the rest of the system. So now it's independent and it's just all bad.
Yeah. Now, I've also seen it more and more on the what'd you call it? The
contractor's plastic donut?
Yeah, so the CPD, that's what I'll call it from now on, the CPDs. I've also taken springs apart before because they heard that sound. It sounds like just a squealing banshee, like once that tube sets on the center bracket. And I've opened one up before and just black, like it was perfectly in a mound in the spring. Like I took it apart really slow. Just dust.
Oh,
just
yeah.
A pile of black
pile
dust.
of metal shavings.
So we replaced it with the
metal center bearing.
Yeah.
Which should be replaced anytime there is one of these present on a door. Mm-hmm. You should always go to a metal center bearing.
Actually, I would, if you are getting a new door installed, doesn't matter if it's A1 or not, when they're installing that new door, most of the time, the CPD, our little donut, is what's going to be in the box. Go ahead and ask that installer or technician to go ahead and just
replace it with a metal.
Just put it. It's not that much, and especially for insurance, like you're saying, it helps the end bearing plates last longer. They all work in unison. Let's not cut a tube in half. Let's not end up any bearings. Just go ahead and get it done ahead of time. We don't have to wait till a spring breaks to get access to it. Now, we also have a closed one.
Now, some manufacturers in that hardware box like you're talking about might not come with the open plate and a contractor's plastic donut.
CPDs.
It might come with a sealed center bearing. Now, these are better than these options sometimes. My biggest gripe with these is this bearing is sealed in this plate. So to change springs sometimes, just the torque of it, the springs are kind of stuck in there. You can't slide the tube as well. I don't like the closed plate. I'd much rather an open plate because then we can change that bearing when needed.
Yes. So serviceability.
Serviceability 100%. But some of those new doors in a hardware box, the manufacturer will actually give you the sealed closed center bearing plate. So you don't have to worry about the plastic.
I think my biggest gripe about it, because the closed center bearing plate, my goodness, It's a little bit heftier, so you'll see this more on like a support for like 4-spring systems, or maybe an extra support for a really long torsion tube or shaft where I get that.
Where it's just a stationary bearing, no springs actually attached to it.
These pilot holes for the cross bolts right here, it's got this much shift compared to the open one.
Oh, there's a lot more room for
There's
adjustment.
a lot more room because a lot of people look at spring lines and they really focus on whether it's smiling or frowning, which means we're not sitting good in the plate.
But they're not realizing the
distance off the wall. So that's why I'm a big fan of these, a lot more than the closed one. But I guess these have their purpose every now and again. Also, you'll see it on some bigger doors. Like, have you seen wow, I'm blanking on the term, but they have someone's gonna remind me in the comments and tell me how dumb I'm in. But they have actually lubricating ports for like grease on big commercial ones. So it's kind of a grayish one, and it has a gigantic end plate. And then those ones for like big heavy doors, like 800 pounds or commercial doors, they have those where they actually bolt on completely, and then it has a grease port in it to actually service it. Because I also wanted to talk to you about what happens as far as serviceability of these. Because some people, whenever it gets to that 25,000, or if you took that bearing and shook it to where they just want to add more lube to it.
Oh.
Yeah, they're like, oh, well, I'll just quiet it down with this, silicone-based spray, and we'll be fine.
So an easy way, and a lot of the ways I would explain to my clients, if the bearing didn't look bad, but I'd pull it down and give it a shake. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them sound like a baby rattle or maraca. Mm-hmm. That's the ball bearings in the bearing itself have conflicted and created flat spots and gapping, or the grease is completely gone and they make that noise. Some people will be like, I'll just spray some lube in there. Well, the lube you're spraying in is going to wash away the pre-packed grease or whatever's left of it. Mm-hmm. And you're actually just speeding up the process of making it even worse.
Yes. I think that's the craziest part. Like if you don't believe us, if you're a garage door technician, I want you to go take a brand new bearing. All right, just a little bit right there. It's shift up and down, but it's my watch actually. But what you do is you go get some like spray lube. And I want you to spray on the edge of this to where it comes like all the way through the bearing. Just do that for a little bit and shake it. Because from the manufacturer, everyone thinks that it's this grease on the outside that you can see that holds everything, but they actually have like a very thin viscous bearing in there as far as like a spray that they get into. And then to keep all that in there is where they put that packing grease to keep it in. Once you spray through that grease, everything falls out. So if you're just like, oh, a little bit of lube to quiet it down, you're just covering a symptom. And guess what? That sound's going to be back a week to even 2 weeks later.
3.
Yeah. And then you're making it worse because now it's really letting out everything. So now, dude, now you just made your door addicted to getting lube all the time. And it doesn't help anything. When these are bad, they're bad. You can't repack it with grease. You can't do anything. It's time to get rid of it. Get your system safer. Let's not cut through torsion tubes or anything like that. I think we covered it, dude.
I did. I just say, realistically, springs, one of the more expensive parts of your torsion system.
Yes.
In comparison, bearings, cables, drums, those are cheap insurance items to know your springs are going to get the maximum life ability out of them.
Right.
And you're going to have less noise, and you're not going to have to worry about those unforeseen worst case scenarios.
Right.
Cheap insurance. I would say at a bare minimum, change the bearings at least every other spring change if you're going to
keep it going.
Yeah,
for sure. Well, you probably know more about bearings than you ever wanted to, but that's okay because we love you and thank you for tuning in. Thanks, Andrew.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Ooh, that was a good one.
Yeah.